Hi everyone, welcome to the TriEssence martial art channel. First of all, I'd like to wish that everyone is still safe during this crisis and would remind you that you should keep your social distance, keep your protocols, stay away from crowded places, and minimize your risk of exposing yourself to this COVID-19 virus. So I hope everyone is still safe and good and healthy. With that said, I have not been uploading videos on the channel for quite some time. Now I have explained this in my previous Patreon only video, but I guess I'll have to explain it here again. So basically, as you all know, most of the countries around the world is currently on lockdown. Now that includes South Africa, which is the country I'm currently in. We've been on lockdown for over a month and a half now. So that makes it impossible to travel to friends and students' houses and shoot video. And I'm the type of person who don't want to upload video just for the sake of uploading video, like many of the other YouTubers out there who just update new content for the sake of having new content, while the content itself is not very purposeful. I like to upload videos when there's something that need to be said, a point need to be made, and things that actually enriches the content on my channel. Which is why I have not been able to come up with anything I think is worth making videos of up until now. Now, recently I have been a guest of a podcast hosted by an old friend of mine, Byron Jacobs. He has a martial art channel dedicated to promoting traditional martial art, and he also remasters a lot of old footages from the 80s and 70s, and he posts them onto YouTube, as well as other interviews with various masters in Beijing. So definitely check his channels out, and yeah, you should find them interesting. Part of his channel is having podcasts where he invites guests to talk about their personal martial art journey. So I was invited during his last podcast, and funny enough, before that I have no idea what a podcast actually is. And yeah, so those of you who are interested in the podcast, I'm gonna try to remember to include a link below so that you can check out the podcast where I would discuss with him my personal martial art journey, as well as some other stuff about my personal life, as well as my opinion on various martial arts that I've done in the past. So definitely check that out if you're interested. So after doing the podcast, I kind of realized that podcast is actually a thing. Now, obviously, I'm not intended to do podcasts per se, but I realized that format where someone talk about stuff is also a thing that people actually watch. Because up until now, in my channel, I've always made it more focused on the practical side of Chinese martial art. It doesn't mean I teach people application, because again, I don't believe in teaching people through the internet. I believe in exposing and revealing information regarding authentic martial art that will help people to make better judgments with their own martial art journey. So in all my previous video, it's been discussing about the training side of martial art. But with this virus going around and lockdown everywhere, I've decided that it's time to start a new series of videos, while the other ones have to wait until lockdown get uplifted. So the new series of videos is going to be called Fact or Fiction, where I would examine various famous and some less famous or less well-known martial art stories, myths, and legends, and discuss how likely it is for those things to have actually happened. Now, before we start, I'd like to just say that it is impossible to have 100% certainty on any past event. Okay, that is because anything that you did not see firsthand is not 100% reliable, or you can't say it's 100% certain. You can't say that it happened with 100% certainty. Even if I seen something firsthand and I tell another person, to that person is already secondhand information. So we can't have 100% certainty. And this especially gets worse for Chinese martial art, because martial art is not actually a big deal in the feudal Chinese social dynamic, right? That means that there are no special organization or an official body that is entrusted with the task of keeping record of what happens in the martial art world. Unlike actual history, where there are actually imperial historians who write stuff down, they will note when there will be a flood, when there was a drought, when there is a riot, when there was a war, what scale the war is. Those things get written down, recorded, and put into the imperial archive. And although even imperial archives sometimes are known to be not trustworthy, but as a whole, those events that say happened most likely happened. However, with traditional martial art world, it's very different because there is no official body that writes things down. So all we are left with is rumors and hearsays, essentially. Even if my grandmaster witnessed something, when it comes to me, it's still a hearsay because I didn't see it with my own eyes. That doesn't mean that none of those things actually happened. It just means that everything you hear, you have to take it with a grain of salt. So in this series of videos, we are not gonna ever claim something is 100% certainty, unless of course I otherwise state that I have information to suggest that this definitely happened. Otherwise, we're gonna work more between something that most likely happened and something that probably didn't happen, and of course something that probably or something that straight out did not happen. So those are the three type of judgment we're going to make, whether it is most likely happened, very unlikely to happen, and downright impossible to have happened. Okay, with that said, we're going to go into our first episode of Fact and Fiction, and this will be probably the first of a few episodes regarding Tai Chi. This one we're going to look at Yang Luchan, right, the founder of Yang-style Tai Chi, and also the rise to the Invincible Yang. Now, Invincible Yang is a nickname given to Yang Luchan during his lifetime. In Chinese, we call it Yang Wudi. Personally, I prefer to translate that into the undefeated Yang, because Wudi means undefeated. Invincible, it can work, but obviously, that word have other meanings. It could mean he can't die, he can't be hurt, which isn't really the case. He just wasn't defeated in his lifetime. So Yang Wudi, I would say, is better translated as the undefeated Yang. Unfortunately, the Invincible Yang has been the most popular translation, so I'm probably going to refer to it as the Invincible Yang as well, just so that people, they can associate with it easier, they know who I'm talking about. But just know that the translation, according to my opinion, is not 100% correct. It's not really the best translation there is. Now, the reason I chose this as my first episode in this series is because Tai Chi has been under a lot of scrutiny and conspiracy and controversy in the past few years, mainly due to a man known as Xiaodong, right? Those of you who has been following the Chinese martial arts scene in China would most certainly heard of this name. He is an MMA fighter as well as an MMA coach. He was originally a Sanda athlete that turned MMA, and now he teaches MMA in Beijing. So a couple of years ago, he famously had a duel against a self-proclaimed Tai Chi master called Wei Lei. The fight accumulated a lot of interest from all kinds of people in China, and was one of the hottest topics at the time on the internet. And allegedly he defeated this so-called Tai Chi master in 9 or 10 seconds. And after that, proceeded on to attack various other famous Tai Chi figures, such as the Grandmaster Chen Xiaodong from Chen village, as well as a couple of others. And this eventually turned into a whole, it's like a whole propaganda war where the Tai Chi people are trying to shut Xiaodong down, and Xiaodong constantly throwing jabs at them on the internet and in social medias, etc. And ultimately led to Xiaodong being shut down by Chinese officials from the Chinese media, etc., etc. I'm sure a lot of you who are interested, you can find that info somewhere else. We're not going to go into detail. Now, I just want to first say that I actually know Xiaodong in person. I first met him in 2003, before all of this, before he was famous, before he became a celebrity, during the first ever Beijing MMA match, right? That's where I first met him. I don't know him very well, but from time to time we chat a little bit on WeChat. He is famous and busy and all of that, so I don't claim that I know him really, really well. But I do know him. We do talk from time to time, And I really do support what he's doing, although I might not agree with the intention of what he's doing, because obviously people has pointed out that he does all of this for personal gain. But personally, I think that is okay. Everyone do things for their personal gain, right? What I'm interested in is the result of his action, which is mostly positive. What he did basically resulted in exposing to the mass public how much fraud there are in Chinese martial art. How many of these grandmasters and top masters who are actually bad and suck at what they do and can't fight to save their own lives. Now maybe we'll talk about that in another video if you're interested. So all I'm going to say here is that I do support what he does, and I think it's very positive towards the overall growth of the authentic Chinese martial art in the Chinese martial art community. However, I do think that a lot of his sayings and criticisms are sort of untrue. Okay, and today I'm going to tackle one of them, which basically, after a bunch of Tai Chi people started to attack him and try to go behind the scene to stuff him over, he got so upset and he started attacking Tai Chi as a whole. In the beginning, he was just attacking certain individuals within the Tai Chi community, but later on he was so infuriated because they were all trying to play trick on him behind the scene and backstabbing him. He got so furious he started attacking Tai Chi as a whole, which I think personally is a mistake, because not all of those Tai Chi members are part of the same organization or the same belief or even the same beneficiary, right? Everyone, they kind of have their own standpoint. They're not all together. So it's actually wrong to attack everyone as one bunch of people. And in doing so, basically he said that Tai Chi was never ever a martial art, including the most famous martial artist within the Tai Chi history, which is Yang Luchan, the founder of Yang Tai Chi. Right? He went as far as saying that Yang Luchan could not fight. He was never a good fighter. All his legends are made up. Now, this is where I think he went too far. And obviously, you have to realize that Xiaodong is not very well educated. And I don't say that as a derogatory term. It is just a fact. He was sent to a sports school, and a sports school in China does very little academic work, right? They spend time to train professional athletes. It's quite different from a lot of other countries in the West, where so-called professional athletes are just people who get paid to compete, right? In China, professional athletes are actually people who get paid on a salary to train for the government. And those people get very little academic education. So Xiaodong is not very well educated. And furthermore, he knows very little about the actual traditional martial arts world and its history and its culture. So again, I support what he does, but a lot of saying that, a lot of criticism claim that he makes are incorrect. And so today we're going to examine this one particular, whether Yang Luchan was a good fighter or not. And obviously, like I said already, we can't say that with 100% certainty because he's long dead. But we are going to reason out how likely or unlikely for Yang Luchan to be a very good fighter. Now, to start everything off, we are going to start from chronological order. So we're going to start from his youth, because I think it's easier to put everything together when it is chronological. So first, we're going to address a few of the common myths regarding his origin, right? So first of all, one of the common myths that people tend to spread around is that Yang Luchan was born a peasant and he can't read or write. Now, this I can say is completely false. Okay, basically, Yang Luchan was born into, most likely, now this I don't know for 100% certainty, but he was most likely born into a merchant family. The reason I say that is because the Yang family has an ancestral home in Yongnian County, right? That's where his family used to live, and I think some of his offspring still lives there. So Yongnian County, there is a Yang family ancestral home. Now, an ancestral home is basically a property with housing and land that has belonged to the family for more than a few generations. So a peasant does not have ancestral homes. Okay, so that's the first thing. Secondly, Yang Luchan spent 18 years studying martial art in the Chen village under Chen Changxing. During the same time, he has a wife and 3 kids. Right? I mean, I don't really know for certain exactly when he fathered those 3 kids, but those 3 kids are definitely around while he was training in the Chen village. And no peasant is able to do that. They don't have the time to not work and train for 18 years, as well as providing for family with a wife and 3 children. So these facts would suggest that he has some money saved up in his family, therefore he's definitely not a peasant. And one of the reasons people sometimes say he's a peasant is because there's a famous novel about him becoming a servant to Chen Changxing, and then while doing so, trying to take peeps and try to steal Chen's martial arts. Right? Whenever they train at night, he will like climb onto the wall and peep through. However, that is only a novel. It's written somewhere during the Republic time. It has nothing to do with the actual event. Okay, those of you who does train internal martial arts, you will know how hard it is, even with a master willing to teach you everything and correct you from time to time. It's still very, very hard to get the correct alignment and everything. So for him to to peep through a wall, to peep on top of a wall and learn martial art, it's just a fairy tale. It's not possible. It makes for a very interesting plot line for a novel, but it's highly, highly unlikely, near impossible in reality. Alright. Furthermore, Chen Changxing was not a very wealthy man, so the chance of him having servant is also next to impossible. So what that means is, in the Chen village, the majority of them are farmers, and that includes Chen Changxing. He's a martial art master, but his social role is actually a farmer. I don't know for sure if he actually farms the land, but he doesn't have a mansion. He's not a rich man. Okay, and anyone who are not rich back in old China, in olden day China during the Qing dynasty, if you're not rich, you are not going to hire a servant. Servant back then is very different to you hiring a maid, for a few hours per week to clean and wash dishes and do laundry, etc. Back in those days, there are no hourly maids, right? When you're a servant, it's almost like a slave that get paid. What that means is a servant actually lives at the master's house, eats over there, sleeps over there, and works and get paid per month. So for anyone to have a servant, you actually need to have at least a servant quarter. You need to have enough money to pay for salary and for food, and you need to have enough work for the servant to do. I mean, if you just have like a common, a farmer's house, which is probably 3 rooms and a small courtyard, why would you need a servant? And how do we know that Chen Changxing wasn't rich? Well, at the time, if you really want to nitpick, you can check the Chen family ancestral record, okay? But I'm not gonna reference that right here, but I can tell you for certainty is that he was definitely not rich. And in fact, his classes that he taught in the Chen village was sponsored by another member of the family who is a merchant and pretty well off. Alright? So the other member of the Chen family who's a merchant, he basically paid for a piece of land to be cleared out and to be paved properly and to have covering over it so that Chen Changxing could teach youngsters and other members of village martial art during the off hours. So for him so essentially someone else has to sponsor for the facility that Chen Changxing teaches at. If he's rich, that wouldn't need to happen. And so based on these, we can basically see that Chen Changxing is in no position to hire actual full-time servants, and Yang Luchan was definitely not a peasant or a servant. Now then, what exactly was he? The most reliable source that we can get at the moment is that he was most probably a merchant's apprentice during his early days. Now, the story does say that he was interested in martial arts since a very young age and has done other martial arts before. But since that his family or his father is most likely a merchant, there's a high chance, at least, this part of the story does have a high probability of actually happening, is that he was doing an apprenticeship under another merchant away from his home county. Okay, the way things work in China is you have your hometown, for him is 永年县, but most of the time when you are a youngster, especially a male, you don't stay at your ancestral home. You go out to other bigger cities to make a living. This is still true in China to today. People from the rural areas, they go to big cities to make a living. And once they make a lot of money, then they return home and retire. So chances are, Yang Luchan was doing an apprenticeship under a merchant in another bigger city, alright, which is Handan or some other city that I'm not very sure. And after that, it is said that during his apprenticeship, he saw a fight between either a thug or a criminal. This part is unclear, but someone who's not very nice had a fight against either the merchant that he was doing an apprenticeship under or someone else. Some stories say that someone came to mock the merchant that he was working under. Some say it was something else. We don't actually know. But there was a conflict and he saw a fight. And he was so impressed by the person, whether it's this merchant or someone else, we don't know. So he was so impressed with that person defeating the thug/criminal that he wanted to learn martial art from this person. However, this person told him that, no, my martial art is very shallow. In Chinese we call it 皮毛. He said it's very shallow. If you really want to learn, you need to find my teacher, who is called Chen in Chen village. Now, although Chen Tai Chi is very famous now, back in those days, actually very, very few people have ever heard of them. They are very enclosed little village and they keep to themselves. If it wasn't for this person displaying his ability against the thug/criminal, Yang Luchan would never have known about Chen Changxing and his martial art. And after that is when he decided to go and study. And according to most reliable record, he did this around the age of 30. So as we can see, at that time, he's most likely already married and well into his adulthood. Again, it goes against him from being a servant or a peasant. He would already have married at the time to father his 3 children, to have the age difference that it has according to, the family record, right? A servant who get sold to a rich person, they don't get married at that age and have kids. Some of them don't get married at all. It's very seldom that servants actually get married. So that again shows that he's definitely not a servant or a peasant. Okay? And given the fact that he spent the next 18 years on and off in the Chen village, it makes it very unlikely to father all 3 kids during that time span. I don't have the exact info on that, but chances are he already had his eldest son before he went to Chen village, and maybe even the second one on his way, and maybe he got the 3rd son when he came back to visit his family. Again, this is not certain and probably it's not important for today's discussion, but just putting it out there for those of you who are interested. So he actually went to the Chen village at the age of 30. And then he spent the next 18 years in the Chen village learning Chinese martial arts. Now, he didn't spend this 18 years all in one go. According to the record, he came back to his home village 3 times in total. The exact year he spent there is uncertain, but my best guess would be that he spent about 3 years there. He comes back, another 3 years there, came back, or maybe 4 years, and then spent another 9 or 10 years there in total. The reason I say 3 to 6 years is because in external martial art, it is believed that 3 years is when you master an art. Right? In China, we call it 3年一小成. And in internal martial art, we call it 3年一小成, 10年一大成, meaning 3 years you accomplish the first stage, and 10 years you accomplish the full cycle. So that's why I tend to believe he spent the first 3 years and he came back. Basically what happened is he spent X amount of years, let's just say 3 years for the time being, but don't quote me on that. He came back and he had a spar against a family friend called Wu Yuxiang. Now Wu Yuxiang is another member of Yongnian County and a more prominent member. His family is more well off, have more money, is more wealthier, and Wu Yuxiang's brother is a military official that works in the imperial city of Beijing. Wu Yuxiang is also a very huge martial art fanatic. So upon Yang Luchan's return from Chen village, Wu Yuxiang was very eager to spar with him and see what kind of skill he acquired. And to Yang Luchan's surprise, he lost completely against Wu Yuxiang. At that point, he realized he didn't actually grasp the essence of Chen Changxing, which is why, after spending some time with family, he went back to Chen village to relearn what he's missing. He came back the second time. He fought with Wu Yuxiang again, and he lost again. At this point, he pretty much spent all his savings, right? So basically, you gotta remember that his wife doesn't work, or maybe that's some, like knitting and sewing, we don't know, but it's definitely not a massive earning. And he has 3 kids. So he probably spent all the saving his father, his forefather accumulated, as well as the saving he accumulated during his apprenticeship, and he was running out of money, right? Imagine 6 to 9 years where you don't work and you just keep training and have to feed your family. Which is why after the second return, Wu Yuxiang made a deal with him. He said, you know what? I'm gonna sponsor your final trip. I'm gonna pay for everything. I'm gonna look after your family. On top of that, I'm gonna, provide a very generous gift that you can present to your master, and hopefully he will actually teach you the real thing. In return, Wu Yuxiang said, whatever you learn in the Chen village, you must teach me. And Yang Luchan agreed to this arrangement, and his last trip to the Chen village was sponsored by Wu Yuxiang. And during his last trip, he spent about 10 years. It's basically the longest period out of the 3 trips over there, which eventually totaled to the amount of 18 years to fully master whatever martial art that Chen Changxing was able to teach him. Now, there are some theories as to why it took him 18 years, right? First of all, there's a highly likely chance that Chen Changxing was not forthcoming initially. This is a common thing in Chinese martial art tradition, even today. A lot of the authentic masters, they're not very forthcoming in teaching newcomers because they are afraid the newcomer are going to be traitors, or they're just going to pop in for a few months and leave with a secret, or they're going to learn their stuff and then turn around and become a threat. Especially in the Chen village back in the day, which is a village full of people from the same surname. They're naturally very defensive against people who are outsiders. So partially, I think Chen Changxing was not very forthcoming and was holding information to Yang Luchan initially. And obviously, after spending so many time and 3 trips there, most likely that's what convinced Chen Changxing that Yang Luchan is very genuine. And also, when you spend time with someone for so long, you tend to see them for who they are. And if they're a trustworthy person or not trustworthy person, you tend to find that out when you spend more time with them every day. So that's the one possible theory of why it took him so long, but eventually he got the essence. The other one is obviously the fact that internal martial art does take very long to learn. I've heard people making claims that it took so long because Yang Luchan had to learn empty hand and weapons and 18 different weapons and like flying darts, flying knives, and pressure point attacks, and it's like a whole list of things like a freaking ninja. And that is not true at all. Okay, there's no pressure point hitting in Yang-style Tai Chi. And there's a very limited amount of weapons. You can see those weapons are not very well developed. So he definitely did not spend 18 years learning all kind of stuff. He spent most of them mastering the fundamental mechanics of Chen family first. Not that I don't call it Tai Chi, I call it Chen family first, because the name Tai Chi does not become a thing until much later on. We're going to talk about that in a separate video. Probably the origin of Tai Chi, we're going to get to that. So, and also, those of you who don't know internal martial art, you're welcome to check my video on the 4 fundamental forces. And once you watch that, you have a better idea of why internal martial art takes so long to train. Okay, it's not hocus pocus, it's not gathering, accumulating qi. It's just that to alter your body on a skeletal level, it just takes time. So either way, he spent 18 years in the Chen village, on and off 3 times in total, eventually able to master Chen family martial arts. Now, upon returning to his home the one final time, he had another spar with Wu Yuxiang, and Wu Yuxiang lost completely, to such a degree that he willingly subject himself to become a student of Yang Luchan, and Yang taught him whatever he learned from Chen village. Wu Yuxiang eventually went and taught, and he promised Yang Luchan to never teach to outsider because, again, his family is quite well off. Yang Luchan's family might be okay before, but not anymore, and therefore Yang Luchan has to make a living from teaching martial arts. So Wu Yuxiang did not want to compete with Yang family for that market, so he promised Yang Luchan that he will only teach his own family member. He will never teach someone that's outside of his family, so that Yang Luchan can get all the students he can. Therefore, Wu Yuxiang eventually taught his nephew Li Yiyu, who then taught another member called Hao Weizhen, and eventually which is why that style of Tai Chi in the West is commonly known as Hao family or Hao-style Tai Chi. But in Chinese, we call it Wu-style Tai Chi. Now, this is confusing in English because Wu and another branch of Tai Chi called Wu, they sound very similar, almost indistinguishable, in English language, which is why they call it Hao-style Tai Chi. But just know that basically Wu Yuxiang founded the Wu third sound style of Tai Chi, which you guys probably know as Hao-style Tai Chi. So after that, or during that period, Wu Yuxiang was so impressed with Yang Luchan's skill, he really wanted to help him to get popular. So his brother works in the imperial city of Beijing. So therefore, he asked his brother to help Yang Luchan out. Now, for those of you who don't know, or never thought about this, right? Chinese martial art is not like farming or weaving or knitting, which all in itself can generate resource or income. Martial art is an ability to win a fight or to defend people, but in itself, you can't generate resources from doing martial art. For example, if you're a farmer, you farm, you can eat that food, and you can sell the extras to get money. Okay, if you weave cloth, fabric, and clothes, you sell it because everybody needs to buy fabric to make clothes. So all of those professions are sort of efficient in generating resources. Chinese martial art or any martial in general is not. They need to be paid by someone else who needs their service. Obviously, farmers and weavers get paid too, but martial art is a more secondary demand. It's not a primary demand, right? Food, clothing, those things everybody absolutely need. Martial art, not everyone needs. So for martial artists to make money back in the days, the best place to do it is in cities where there's a lot of rich people. And in the Qing dynasty, there's no place better than a place called Beijing, the imperial city. Which is why all the best martial artists congregate in Beijing trying to make a better living, right? Where there are rich people, there are royalties, there are rich merchants, people who need protection, bodyguard, they need guard for their mansions, they need security escort, or maybe just people who want to learn how to self-defend, wealthy merchants' son who want to be able to defend themselves. So all the job opportunity are in these imperial city of Beijing, as well as a few other major cities. But Beijing is one of the most prominent places for martial artists to find jobs, which is why back in the Qing dynasty, especially with the mid to the late Qing dynasty, all the top martial artists can be found in Beijing. So Wu Yuxiang asked his brother to help to introduce Yang Luchan to Beijing. Now this is kind of hard because he comes from a small county. And Beijing, imperial people naturally look down on people who are not from the city, right? They see them as farmers. So it's not easy for Yang Luchan to get recognized in Beijing. He needs introduction. And Wu Yuxiang eventually got hold of someone called Wu Quanyou. He's the father of the founder of Wu-style Tai Chi, right? The second son, Wu-style Tai Chi. Wu Quanyou was also an imperial officer. I don't know exactly his title, but he works in one of the the army of the 8 flag, right? Those of you who don't know, that's basically the official army of the Qing dynasty. So he had a position, a minor one, not like major, he wasn't a general or anything, but he has a position in the imperial army. And so they got hold of him, and he was also very impressed with Yang Luchan's skill, and eventually also became a student of Yang Luchan. So between Wu Yuxiang, Wu's brother, and Wu Quanyou, they got hold of other people as well, and eventually they managed to get an audition for Yang Luchan was a royal prince, basically a brother of the current emperor at the time, a royal prince. Now the prince, from what we can gather, was already pretty old at the time, so he wasn't interested in learning it himself. I don't have enough info to say whether he learned it, whether he practiced some of it or not, but his primary goal is to let his son practice under Yang Luchan. So that is basically how Yang Luchan became a martial instructor for the imperial family. Now, when they say the imperial family, often people like to exaggerate and claim that he actually taught the emperor and all of that. It's completely untrue. He was simply the martial art master of a prince, or the son of the current prince at the time. He wasn't teaching the emperor or anyone in the Forbidden City. It was outside the Forbidden City. It was one of the prince's mansion. That's where he taught. Still, this is a very huge accomplishment, perhaps the highest accomplishment any martial artist at the time could or thereafter could have achieved on a social level, right? He basically had the highest position any martial artist could ever hope for. And this basically resulted in a lot of people becoming jealous of his position, and then they came to challenge him. Alright, so with that, we're going to end the part 1 of this video, and if you enjoyed it, then be sure to check part 2. Thanks for watching TriEssence Martial Art channel. I'll see you in a short bit.